Rizwan had always imagined that being a diplomat meant long meetings, complicated negotiations, and endless paperwork. He had prepared for months for this trip, studying the alien cultures of Scytheria, memorizing their protocols, and learning their gestures and customs. But nothing in his training had prepared him for the moment he actually stood in the presence of Lyra and Lyssa, the twin rulers of the planet, whose reputation stretched across galaxies. Scytheria was more breathtaking than any human could describe. The sky shimmered with colors humans did not have names for, and the air was thick with sweet fragrances that seemed to make the mind sharper. The palace, where the twins lived, floated above a forest of glowing trees, their roots stretching into rivers of liquid light. Rizwan had walked through ceremonial halls adorned with floating crystals and murals that moved as though they were alive. Every step he took made him feel like a tiny figure in a painting, a human so fragile compared to the grandeur of alien civilization. Lyra and Lyssa were unlike anything he had expected. They were beautiful in a way that seemed almost impossible, tall and elegant with features symmetrical to perfection. Their skin shimmered faintly in the light, and their eyes, large and luminous, seemed to look straight into the thoughts of anyone who met them. What truly unsettled Rizwan, however, was the way they moved together synchronized perfectly, yet each with a subtle difference, as if their minds could communicate without words. When Rizwan entered the ceremonial room, he could feel the attention of every being in the room. Delegates from other worlds dressed in metallic fabrics and exotic forms watched silently, waiting. The twins were seated on elevated chairs that seemed to float, their presence commanding without a word. Rizwan stepped forward, bowed respectfully, and then almost unconsciously, he made a small joke. It was meant to ease the tension, to make a bridge between him and the alien rulers. He smiled nervously and said, "I like you so much." The room froze. Not a single sound came from anyone. Rizwan immediately realized he had made a mistake, but before he could explain, the twins reacted. Lyra tilted her head slightly, her eyes sparkling with interest. Lyssa mirrored her motion. They leaned forward, their attention completely on Rizwan. "Did you truly mean that?" Lyra asked, her voice smooth and melodic, carrying weight beyond its softness. Rizwan swallowed, unsure how to respond. I was joking," he stammered. It's just a human thing." The twins exchanged a glance, subtle but full of meaning. Then Lyssa spoke. "In our culture, words of affection are sacred. They are not spoken lightly. If one says, 'I like you so much,' the speaker accepts responsibility for that feeling." Rizwan felt his heart sink. He had heard about Scytheria's strict customs, but he had not expected that a joke could become a serious matter. I understand," he said cautiously, hoping his nervous smile would lighten the tension, "but I didn't mean it seriously. It's just humor." Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly, but not in anger. She tilted her head in thought. "We will see," she said simply. "You are now pledged as an honored guest under our care. You cannot leave until our council decides your fate." Rizwan froze. The words sank in slowly. He was trapped. A joke had turned into a binding agreement, and he was now, in all practical terms, under the guardianship of two of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Rizwan was escorted to a guest chamber that overlooked the glowing forests of Scytheria. The room was comfortable beyond imagination, with soft furniture that adapted to his posture and walls that displayed calming landscapes. Yet no matter how beautiful the surroundings were, Rizwan could not stop thinking about the twins. He had to find a way to survive this situation without offending them further. He had to learn their customs quickly, and he had to be careful with his words. Even a small misstep could have consequences he could not imagine. The next morning, Lyra and Lyssa visited him personally. They moved through the corridors with a grace that made it look as though they were gliding, rather than walking. Their curiosity about him was obvious, and they asked question after question about Earth, human life, and human emotions. Rizwan answered carefully, but he also found himself laughing at some of their reactions. They seemed fascinated by the simplest aspects of humanity, how humans ate, slept, or expressed friendship. Yet despite their curiosity, there was an underlying intensity in their attention that made Rizwan uneasy. He was not just a guest. He was now an object of fascination, a puzzle for them to study, and while he tried to maintain his composure, he could not help noticing how much power the twins held over him, simply by being present. Over the following days, Rizwan was introduced to Zitheria's incredible technology. He marveled at machines that responded to thought, gardens that grew in midair, and creatures that could change shape according to their environment. The twins watched him closely as he explored, noting his reactions, studying his problem-solving abilities, and occasionally smiling when he expressed amazement. Despite the initial tension, Rizwan began to find moments of enjoyment. He realized that the twins were not malicious. They were simply beings of immense intelligence and curiosity. They had never encountered humans closely before, and every small action, every joke, every expression he made was a subject of observation. One afternoon, while exploring a chamber filled with floating geometric structures, Rizwan accidentally triggered a mechanism that made the shapes rearrange in dazzling patterns. The twins laughed, an unusual sound, musical and warm, and Rizwan felt a small thrill of relief. For a moment he was not a trapped diplomat, but a human capable of creating something the aliens could not fully predict. That evening, over a dinner of unfamiliar but delicious foods, Rizwan tried to make conversation. He told small stories about life on Earth, about ordinary human experiences that in his own eyes seemed mundane. But to Lyra and Lissa, these stories were extraordinary. They asked countless questions, trying to understand not only the facts but also the emotions behind them. Rizwan began to see a pattern. The twins were fascinated not just by humans' physical abilities or intelligence, but by their emotional complexity. In a way, they seemed to respect humans for the very things that often caused problems on Earth: humor, unpredictability, courage, and creativity. By the end of the week, Rizwan realized that survival was no longer just about avoiding mistakes. It was about demonstrating the value of being human. Every small gesture, every clever observation, and even every laugh became a way to communicate that humans were more than fragile creatures. They were unique, resilient, and capable of surprising even the most advanced alien minds. And yet, Rizwan could not ignore the underlying danger. One wrong word, one ill-timed joke could undo all the progress he had made. The twins were unpredictable, and while they seemed kind, their power was absolute. He had to stay alert, thoughtful, and clever at all times. One night, lying in his chamber and staring at the glowing forest below, Rizwan reflected on how a single joke, those 4 simple words, had changed everything. It was a moment of humor that had brought him into a situation more complex and fascinating than anything he had ever imagined. And it had also revealed something profound. Humans had a strength that was not just physical or intellectual, but emotional. They could charm, adapt, and endure in ways that others could not. Rizwan knew that his journey on Zitheria was only beginning. He had survived the first challenge, winning the twins' attention without offending them, but far greater tests awaited. The world around him was full of wonder, danger, and mystery. And at the heart of it all were Lyra and Lissa, the twin sisters whose curiosity and power could either destroy him or elevate him beyond anything he had ever dreamed. As sleep finally came, Rizwan felt a mixture of fear, excitement, and determination. He had entered this world as a diplomat armed with training and knowledge. But he would leave or survive not by protocol alone, but by embracing what it truly meant to be human, clever, adaptable, and courageous. And maybe, just maybe, his little joke had opened a door to something greater than anyone could have imagined. The morning sun on Zitheria cast colors across the floating forests that no human sky could ever match. Rizwan stood at the edge of the palace balcony, staring at the glowing rivers below and the trees that seemed to hum with life. For the past week he had been learning the rules of the palace, the customs of the twin sisters, and the strange but beautiful ways of Zitherian life. Every day was a test, and every word he spoke mattered more than he could have imagined. Lyra and Lissa arrived quietly, as always, moving together like a single being split into 2. Their presence was commanding yet calm. "Today," Lyra said, "we will show you a part of Zitheria that very few visitors see." Rizwan nodded, trying to mask the nervous excitement he felt. He had learned that these excursions were never ordinary. When the twins invited someone to explore with them, it was often as much a test as a privilege. They led him through corridors that seemed endless, each one filled with bioluminescent plants and floating devices that responded to the twins' touch. Rizwan noticed how the walls seemed to watch him, tiny sensors blinking like eyes. He reminded himself to stay aware of his movements, his words, and even the tone of his voice. Finally, they reached a chamber unlike any Rizwan had seen. It was open to the sky, but instead of air, there was a faint mist that shimmered with color. Floating platforms hovered above the ground, each moving slowly in patterns that seemed random but were probably controlled by some hidden system. On each platform rested a different creature, some with wings like glass, others with bodies that could change shape in response to touch. These creatures are Zetheria's living knowledge, Lissa explained. They learn, they adapt, and they respond to thought. Most humans would be frightened by them. Rizwan forced a calm smile. I've never seen anything like this. They're incredible. Lyra's eyes glimmered. Then you will help us interact with them. Rizwan's heart raced. He had no idea what that meant. Interact? He asked carefully. The twins stepped onto a platform and a creature resembling a glowing fox approached them. Rizwan instinctively bent down to reach it, but the creature stopped, circling him as though judging his intentions. Lissa leaned forward. The creatures respond not just to action but to thought. Focus your mind and they will sense it. Rizwan closed his eyes and tried to clear his mind. He remembered techniques from meditation classes, and slowly, the fox-like creature stopped circling and approached him cautiously. He extended his hand, feeling a strange warmth as it nuzzled him. Lyra smiled. You are human. You think differently. You adapt quickly. For the next few hours, Rizwan learned to interact with the creatures, each one responding in ways that were impossible to predict. He realized that human intuition, combined with courage and curiosity, allowed him to connect with them more easily than Zetherians might have expected. The twins observed silently, noting every reaction, every creative approach he used. After the creatures, the twins led him to a floating garden. The plants hovered in midair, their roots suspended in glowing orbs of liquid light. Some plants responded to thought, others to touch, and some required complex combinations of movement and sound to bloom. Rizwan spent hours experimenting, laughing at his own mistakes and marveling when a plant finally responded correctly. You are clever, Lissa said at one point. Most visitors would fail quickly. You learn through trial and error and you adapt. Rizwan smiled, realizing that he was starting to understand the twins' fascination with humans. They were not cruel or mean-spirited. They were deeply curious. And humans, with their unpredictable humor, creativity, and problem-solving skills, were a puzzle they had not yet fully solved. As the sun began to set, Rizwan found himself in a chamber filled with mirrors that reflected not just his image, but his emotions, intentions, and even his thoughts in subtle ways. The twins had brought him here to observe, and he could feel their eyes studying him closely. Lyra spoke softly. Humans are strange creatures. You see the world differently than we do. You find solutions that seem obvious to you but impossible to us. Rizwan laughed nervously. I guess that's one way to survive. We have to adapt quickly to challenges. Maybe that's why humans have done well on Earth even when things get hard. Lissa tilted her head. Perhaps, but it is not just survival. It is your creativity, your emotions, and your unpredictability. You can inspire change without even realizing it. Rizwan felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. The twins' praise was unlike anything he had ever received. Yet it also reminded him of the responsibility he carried. Every action, every word, every thought mattered. He was being observed in a way humans were not used to, and mistakes could have consequences far beyond anything he had imagined. The following days became a whirlwind of learning, exploration, and testing. The twins designed challenges for him that were impossible to predict. One day, he had to solve a puzzle that involved rearranging floating geometric shapes according to patterns only visible in reflections. Another day, he had to navigate a labyrinth filled with creatures that mimicked his movements, forcing him to think creatively to avoid traps. Through all of this, Rizwan realized that humans had something special. While the Zetherians were brilliant and precise, they struggled with unpredictability. Human intuition, humor, and adaptability allowed Rizwan to solve problems in ways the twins had not expected. Each success earned him subtle nods of approval, small smiles, and the quiet fascination that was both thrilling and terrifying. One evening, while sitting in a quiet chamber overlooking the glowing forests, Rizwan spoke to the twins. I never imagined that a joke would bring me here. I thought I would meet aliens, negotiate treaties, and then return home. But I've learned more in a few days than I could have imagined. Lyra's expression was unreadable, but her voice carried warmth. A joke can be powerful. It can open doors, reveal intentions, and show courage. You have shown us that humans are more than we expected. Lysa added, and you have shown us that even small actions can have great meaning. You think creatively, act bravely, and adapt quickly. That is rare, even among Zitharians. Rizwan felt a deep sense of relief and pride. He had survived the first stage of their attention, but he knew this was only the beginning. The twins' fascination with humans was growing, and with it the challenges would become greater. The next challenge came unexpectedly. The twins invited him to participate in a ceremonial game designed to test both mind and heart. The rules were complex and the stakes were high. Success would earn him further respect and possibly freedom. Failure could mean being kept under observation indefinitely. The game required him to solve a series of problems, each one building on the previous, involving both logic and empathy. He had to understand the intentions of the creatures, anticipate the twins' responses, and use his own judgment to navigate unpredictable situations. It was exhausting, but Rizwan discovered something remarkable. Humans had a unique way of thinking that allowed them to connect seemingly unrelated ideas, to improvise, and to find solutions that others could not. Over time, Rizwan also learned about Lyra and Lissa's past. They had grown up in a world of strict expectations where emotions were controlled and actions were measured. Their fascination with him was partly because he showed them something different: courage, humor, and creativity that did not follow rules. They had never met humans closely before, and Rizwan's presence challenged their understanding of life and intelligence. By the end of the second week, Rizwan realized that he was no longer just a visitor. He had become part of the twins' world, a living example of what humans could do, and a bridge between Zytheria and Earth. He was aware of the danger, but he also felt a sense of purpose. Every action mattered, but every success brought him closer to understanding the twins, earning their respect and demonstrating the value of humanity. One night, as he lay on his bed overlooking the glowing forests, Rizwan reflected on how far he had come. A simple joke, 4 words spoken nervously at a dinner, had changed his life. It had brought him into a world of wonder, danger, and opportunity. It had challenged him to think in ways he had never imagined, to act with courage and to show the strength of being human. And he knew that the journey was only beginning. The twins' fascination would grow and the challenges would become more difficult. But Rizwan also knew that humans had something the Zytharians did not fully understand: the ability to adapt, to think creatively, and to inspire change through simple actions. As sleep came, Rizwan felt a mixture of fear, excitement, and determination. He had survived the first trials, earned small victories, and learned to navigate a world unlike any on Earth. But he also knew that greater challenges awaited, and he would need every bit of his courage, wit, and humanity to face them. For Rizwan, the adventure had just begun, and the twin sisters were only the first test in a galaxy full of mysteries waiting to be discovered. The day began quietly, with Zytheria's twin suns casting soft light over the floating forests. Rizwan awoke in his chamber, feeling a mix of anticipation and nervousness. The twins had hinted the previous evening that a major challenge awaited him, one that would test not only his intelligence but also his courage and heart. The weight of those words pressed on him, yet there was a spark of excitement too. He had survived the first trials, and he was determined to show that humans were capable of more than even the twins could imagine. When he entered the ceremonial hall, Lyra and Lissa were waiting. Their presence seemed even more imposing than usual, as if they had drawn all the energy from the room into themselves. They moved with synchronized grace, yet each held a distinct expression, Lyra calm and observing, Lysa playful but intense. "Today," Lyra said, "you will face a challenge designed to test the very essence of humanity. Logic, empathy, creativity, and courage will all be required." Rizwan swallowed and nodded. "I understand," he said, his voice steady despite the nerves twisting in his stomach. The twins led him to a chamber unlike any he had seen before. It was enormous, circular, and suspended above a glowing canyon. The floor was made of translucent panels, each one showing shifting landscapes and patterns underneath. Suspended platforms hovered above the floor, and various objects, geometric shapes, glowing orbs, and mechanical creatures, moved in intricate patterns around the room. "This is the chamber of tests," Lissa explained. "You must navigate the challenges in sequence. Each task will require thought, intuition, and judgment. Failure in any one may force you to start over." Rizwan's heart raced. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. The first task appeared immediately, a series of floating cubes, each one glowing with symbols that seemed to shift when looked at directly. A soft hum filled the chamber, and Rizwan felt as though the room itself was observing him. He remembered something the twins had said. Humans think differently. He studied the cubes carefully, noticing subtle patterns in the way the symbols changed. Instead of focusing on the symbols themselves, he focused on the spaces between them and the sequences they formed. Slowly, he began rearranging the cubes, guided not by pure logic but by intuition and creativity. The moment the last cube clicked into place, the floor beneath him shifted, revealing the next task. A bridge of floating platforms that moved in response to thought. Creatures resembling glowing serpents slithered around the platforms, sensing hesitation and reacting to it. Rizwan realized he had to stay calm, focus his mind, and move with intention. One misstep could send him falling through the glowing canyon below. He closed his eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and visualized each platform as solid ground. Slowly, carefully, he stepped forward, each movement deliberate. The serpent slithered closer, testing his focus, but he remained calm. Step by step, he crossed the bridge, feeling a surge of relief as he reached the other side. Lyra and Lissa's eyes followed every move, their expressions unreadable, yet clearly impressed. Rizwan could feel their attention like a physical weight, but it no longer frightened him. Instead, it motivated him. He had survived the first two challenges by using uniquely human traits: intuition, creativity, and adaptability. The next task was a puzzle of empathy. A group of creatures, each glowing with a different color, approached him. They seemed distressed, their movements erratic. Rizwan instinctively reached out, not just physically, but with his understanding of feelings. He observed their behavior, listened to the patterns in their glowing, and mirrored their emotions carefully. Slowly, the creatures calmed, their colors blending into harmony. Lissa stepped forward, her eyes sparkling. "You are learning quickly. Humans understand emotions in ways Etherians often cannot. You connect through feeling, not just thought." Rizwan smiled faintly. "I guess that's part of being human. We learn, adapt, and empathize. It's how we survive and connect with others." The final task awaited him at the center of the chamber. A massive structure of shifting light and sound pulsated, creating patterns that dazzled the eyes and confused the mind. It required combining all he had learned so far: logic, creativity, focus, and empathy. The twins observed silently, their eyes locked on him, waiting for his approach. Rizwan took a deep breath and stepped forward. At first, the structure seemed impossible. Every movement, every thought caused it to change in unpredictable ways. He remembered the lessons of the past days, the floating gardens, the creatures, the puzzles. He realized that the key was not to control the structure, but to understand it. He watched the patterns, followed their flow, and used his instincts to guide his actions. Time seemed a blur. Rizwan moved with a rhythm that combined human intuition and careful observation. Slowly, the chaos of the structure began to respond. Patterns aligned, colors harmonized, and a soft, harmonious hum filled the chamber. The structure stabilized, and Rizwan felt a surge of triumph unlike anything he had experienced. Lyra and Lissa stepped forward, their faces showing approval for the first time in days. "You have succeeded," Lyra said, her voice carrying pride and respect. "You have demonstrated courage, intelligence, creativity, and heart. You are human, yet you are extraordinary." Rizwan bowed slightly, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. "Thank you, I just tried to do my best. I think that's all any human can do." Lissa's expression softened. "More than you know, Rizwan. Today you have shown us that humans are not just clever, but capable of inspiring change, of seeing solutions where others see only difficulty." For the first time since arriving on Zetheria, Rizwan felt that he was truly seen, not just as a guest but as a being with value and potential. He realized that the twins' fascination was not mere curiosity, It was admiration. They had underestimated humans until now, and he had proven that their intuition, creativity, and courage could match even the most advanced beings in the galaxy. Over the next few hours, the twins debriefed him, asking questions about his approach to each task, what he had felt, and how he had made decisions. Rizwan answered honestly, explaining his thoughts and emotions, sharing his reasoning and even his mistakes. Lyra and Lissa listened intently, occasionally exchanging subtle glances that spoke volumes. "You have done more than survive," Lyra said finally. "You have taught us something about humanity that we could not have learned otherwise. You have shown us adaptability, humor, and courage. We respect you for it." Rizwan smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. The challenge had been daunting, and yet he had succeeded not by following rules or instructions but by being himself, a human with intuition, creativity, and heart. He had not only earned the twins' respect but had also deepened the bond between their worlds. As evening fell, Rizwan was invited to a quiet chamber overlooking Zetheria's floating forests. Lyra and Lissa joined him, sitting on hovering platforms, their expressions relaxed yet attentive. The twin suns cast soft colors across the landscape, creating a sense of peace and wonder. "You have done something remarkable," Lysa said softly. "Most beings, even those far older than humans, would have failed this challenge. You succeeded because you embraced what makes humans unique." Rizwan nodded, humbled. "I didn't know I could do it either. I just tried to think, observe, and understand. I guess humans are good at that, finding solutions in unexpected ways." Lyra's eyes glimmered. "And in doing so, you have changed how we see humans. We no longer view your species as fragile or amusing. We see potential, courage, and creativity. You have earned our admiration." For the first time since arriving on Zetheria, Rizwan felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He had faced impossible challenges, navigated a world of wonder and danger, and proven that humanity had qualities even the most advanced alien minds could not fully understand. That night, as he lay in his chamber, Rizwan reflected on the journey so far. A simple joke, 4 words spoken nervously at a dinner, had led him into a world beyond imagination. He had faced challenges that tested his mind, heart, and courage. He had discovered not only the wonders of Zetheria, but also the strength and uniqueness of being human. He realized that the journey was far from over. The twins' fascination would grow, and the challenges would continue, but he now understood that humans had something rare: the ability to adapt, to think creatively, and to inspire respect through courage and ingenuity. Rizwan drifted to sleep with a mixture of relief, pride, and anticipation. The galaxy was full of mysteries, and he was only beginning to understand what humans could accomplish. The twin sisters, once distant and powerful figures, were now allies who respected his mind and admired his courage. And in that respect, he found hope for the adventures yet to come, knowing that humanity's greatest strengths were just beginning to be revealed. The morning on Zetheria was calm, but Rizwan could feel the tension in the air. The twin suns rose slowly, casting soft beams over the floating forests, illuminating the glowing rivers and the mist that hovered above them. Today was different. The twins had summoned him early and moved with a quiet purpose, their usual playfulness replaced by a serious grace that Rizwan had learned to read as both respect and anticipation. He stepped into the ceremonial hall and bowed as he always did. Lyra and Lissa were waiting, seated on their floating chairs that shimmered in the soft morning light. Their eyes met his, and for the first time, Rizwan saw not just curiosity or fascination, but a sense of acknowledgement, as if they were seeing him truly for who he was. "You have completed the challenges," Lyra said, her voice calm, yet full of meaning. "You have shown courage, intelligence, creativity, and empathy. You have proven yourself as a human, and not just any human, a human worthy of respect." Rizwan felt a wave of relief and pride. The last weeks had been filled with tests that pushed him to his limits. He had faced creatures, puzzles, and challenges that seemed impossible, yet he had adapted, learned, and succeeded. Now, standing before the twins, he realized how far he had come. Lissa leaned forward slightly. "And yet, this is not the end. You have earned the right to choose your path. You may return to Earth with honor, or you may stay and continue to learn with us, helping bridge the gap between our worlds." Rizwan's mind raced. The offer was extraordinary. Staying on Scifi meant adventure, discovery, and continued challenges. It meant learning things no human had ever known. Returning to Earth meant safety, familiarity, and sharing stories that would amaze everyone he knew. He weighed his options carefully, remembering all that he had experienced and learned. I think I need to return, he said finally, his voice steady. Earth is my home. But I am grateful for everything you have taught me. I will never forget Scifi or the lessons I have learned here. The twins exchanged a glance. Lyra's lips curved into a small smile. Then your choice is honored. You may leave with knowledge, respect, and our friendship, Lisa added. And should you ever return, you will always have a place here. You have shown that humans are not only clever but capable of courage and wisdom beyond expectation. Rizwan felt a warmth in his chest. He had feared being trapped, misunderstood, or dismissed. Yet the twins had come to see him not just as a visitor, but as a representative of humanity. They had recognized the value of human traits, intuition, creativity, empathy, and humor, and had respected him for it. Before his departure, the twins led him through a final tour of Scifi. They revisited the floating gardens where Rizwan marveled at the plants that danced in midair and responded to thought. They returned to the creatures he had learned to interact with, observing him as he communicated with them calmly and confidently. Rizwan realized how much he had grown. Tasks that had once terrified him now felt natural, as though he belonged in this strange, luminous world. As they reached the edge of the palace, overlooking the glowing forests and rivers, Lyra spoke softly. Remember, Rizwan, the galaxy is vast and humans are just beginning to explore it. Your creativity and courage are proof that your species can achieve far more than we imagined. Rizwan nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude and responsibility. I will remember. And I will share what I have learned. Humans have much to learn, but also much to offer. Lisa placed a delicate hand on his shoulder, a gesture of trust and respect. You are more than a visitor, Rizwan. You are a bridge between worlds. Let that guide you, and you will continue to inspire. With that, Rizwan stepped onto the transport platform that would take him back to Earth. The chamber shimmered with light, and as the machinery activated, he felt a mixture of excitement and nostalgia. He had faced unimaginable challenges, learned from beings far wiser and more advanced than humans, and proven that even in the vastness of the galaxy, humanity had a unique and valuable place. The journey home was smooth, but Rizwan's thoughts were filled with reflection. He thought of the floating gardens, the glowing creatures, and the puzzles that had tested every part of him. He thought of the twins, their synchronized movements, their intense curiosity, and their ultimate respect. And he thought of the simple joke that had started it all, 4 words that had changed the course of his journey and revealed humanity's strength. When he returned to Earth, Rizwan was greeted not only as a diplomat but as someone who had experienced the extraordinary. He shared his stories carefully, describing the beauty and wonder of Scifi, the intelligence and curiosity of its twin rulers, and the lessons he had learned about courage, creativity, and empathy. People listened in awe, and for the first time, many realized that humanity's greatest strengths were not only on Earth, but could shine in the vastness of space. Rizwan continued his work as a diplomat, but he carried Scifi with him in his thoughts and actions. Every decision he made, every negotiation, and every challenge reminded him of what he had learned from the twins. Humanity, he knew now, was capable of achieving more than anyone had imagined, and that even a single individual could inspire change across worlds. Months later, he received a message from Scifi, delivered through a subtle but unmistakable signal. It was not a request nor a command, but an invitation. Lyra and Lisa had recognized his potential as a human ambassador, someone who could carry the lessons of their world to others, and perhaps return someday to continue bridging the gap between species. Rizwan smiled. He understood now that his journey was far from over. The galaxy was full of mysteries, challenges, and wonders, and humans had only begun to discover their place within it. And while he had returned to Earth, he carried the twin sisters' respect, the memory of Scifi, and the proof that humans were clever, courageous, and uniquely capable of inspiring awe and friendship in even the most advanced beings. He often thought back to that first dinner, to the joke that had started it all. 4 simple words spoken in nervous humor had changed everything. They had opened a door to discovery, respect, and a bond between worlds. And Rizwan realized that sometimes the smallest moments could have the greatest impact. shaping not just individual lives but the future of entire civilizations. As he looked up at the stars at night, Rizwan felt a deep sense of connection. Somewhere across the galaxy, Lyra and Lysa watched, just as curious and thoughtful as ever. And he knew that the human spirit, the creativity, courage, and curiosity that had carried him through every challenge, would continue to grow, not just on Earth but wherever humans dared to go. For Rizwan, the adventure had begun with a simple joke, and it ended with a profound understanding. Humans, though small in the vastness of space, could shine brighter than any star when courage, heart, and intellect came together. And in the hearts of the twin sisters on Zetheria, humanity had found not only respect but the promise of lasting friendship and endless possibilities.